I'm an autism awareness angel, making sure my wings protect the different, the stranger than. I'm an autism awareness angel. It's good, cause I'm cool with the unique behavior. I'm an autism awareness angel. Will you accept me? Cause I accept you. I'm an autism awareness angel, cause a view from the spectrum is a better point of view.
Hello, I'm Tally, and welcome back to Autism 30. Today on our podcast, we are speaking with three wonderful representatives from Plan Lifetime Advocacy Network, Mr. Ted Kuntz, Mr. Tim Ames, and Miss Rebecca Pauls. Ted Kuntz is the chair of the organization and is a parent, author, and psychotherapist in private practice in Vancouver, British Columbia. Ted has a master's degree in counseling psychology and more than 25 years of clinical experience. Ted and his family became one of Plan's youngest lifetime members when they joined in the 1990s, and over the years, Ted has been an active member facilitating many workshops and retreats, and making regular contributions to the newsletter. Ted is the author of Peace Begins With Me and Making Peace with the Future. Hello, Ted.
Hello, Tally.
And Tim Ames is the executive director and oversees the organization resilient team of family members, staff, and volunteer in their work of developing and sustaining social networks, pursuing outreach and educational initiatives, reaching out to public, private, and nonprofit partners, establishing strategic direction, controlling budgets, income, and expenses, and maintaining the legal obligation of charitable organization. Prior to this position, Tim has served as a community connector for Plan, sat on the board of Plan Institute, and also worked for 3 years as general manager of TIES. In addition, Tim brings over 25 years' experience in business, sales, management, and personal development, both in Canada and internationally, as well as experience as facilitator of personal development program and workshops for Anthony Robbins. Tim accepted the executive director position at Plan in 2013 to help lead the membership-based organization towards new levels of sustained growth. Tim has a passion for helping people discover and develop their own path towards a good life. Hello, Tim.
Good morning, Tally.
And Rebecca Pauls is the director and enthusiastic and creative facilitator with a broad range of experiences in community development and supporting people with disabilities. She has worked in various parts of Canada and internationally in places like Ethiopia, Zimbabwe, and Guatemala. Rebecca is passionate about seeing the unique gifts that each of us have and is convinced that our communities are stronger, safer, and more vibrant when each of us is contributing and sharing gifts. She has a deep appreciation for the roles that family and friends play in our lives and is committed to connecting people with other people and places around them. Rebecca moved to British Columbia from Waterloo, Ontario. Welcome, Rebecca.
Hi, Tally.
And welcome all three of you, and thank you for joining us today to talk about your wonderful organization that offers great help and services to our community.
Nice to be here.
Really nice to be here.
And we'll start off with the questions. So Ted, who is Plan Lifetime Advocacy Network?
Well, Tally, Plan really is a group of families that have come together, and they share in a journey and they share in a commitment to securing the future for their sons and daughters who are vulnerable. And they share some things in common, and it's those shared values that I think is really what Plan is. And so some of the things that we share is we share a commitment to securing the future. We believe in the power and the importance of relationships. We believe in the contribution of our sons and daughters and finding a place for that contribution to be given. We believe in family leadership and the wisdom and the voice of families. And we also believe that it's valuable for us to be independent of government funding to allow us the ability to advocate on behalf of the families that we are.
Which is very important, and all those things are wonderful. And can you give us a history of how and when and why Plan was started?
Sure. So Plan, it's the roots of Plan began in 1987 with a group of senior parents who began to wonder about the question, who will care for our sons and our daughters after we're gone?
Which I know is a concern for many of us.
Yes. And so what happened here in British Columbia is in 1986 we closed our institutions and we moved our sons and daughters that were living in institutions into the community.
And I don't know if people are aware of that who are currently new to the disability community, but that is the way it was.
Right. And so when our sons and daughters were living in institutions, when mom and dad passed, it really didn't change the day-to-day life of our sons and daughters. But when they were moved into the community and lived in the community, and in many cases continued to live with their moms and dads, when mom and dad pass away, that can become a significant challenge in the life of our sons and daughters. And so these elderly parents, most of them were in their 70s and 80s, began to confront their own mortality. And they began to ask the question, who will care for my son or my daughter after I'm gone?
Yes.
And there wasn't any easy answers to that. And one of the things they did is they began to gather information and to research and to see what was happening around the world. And they came together around those values that I spoke about a minute ago. And in 1989, they officially formed as a nonprofit charitable organization called PLAN. And PLAN stands for Planned Lifetime Advocacy Network Society. And we believe all of those components are important. And so we've been a group of families that have wrestled with those ideas. We've experimented with building networks of support around our sons and daughters. We've been tremendous advocates for changing the way a community cares for our vulnerable citizens. And we have grown immensely in terms of our wisdom as families.
And as a consequence, you really have created an organization that really is beneficial to the rest of us.
Well, it serves all of us. I think what PLAN has done that I admire is it's helping to create a kinder and a more compassionate community.
Absolutely.
And that serves all of us. We all need kindness and compassion.
There's no question about that. And I know you stated some situations, but why is it important to plan for the future after you pass? And I really want to state this because I know that questions some people wrestle with.
Well, Tally, one of the things that I came to terms with my own son, my son's name is Joshua, and I began to recognize that my responsibility to Josh doesn't end when I die. It ends when Josh dies.
Oh, and that's a very important point to remember.
And if Josh outlives me, as I hope he will, my challenge as a responsible parent is how do I care for him after I'm gone? Who will be there for him? Who will advocate for him? Who will understand his way of making choices and honor those choices? Who will be in relationship with him? And so I want Josh to have a good life. He has a good life now, and I want that to continue after I'm gone.
Absolutely.
And so to me, PLAN is again, a group of families that ask that question, and it takes courage to ask that question.
There's no question, yes.
It means that we have to confront our own mortality, and that's not an easy thing to do.
No, it certainly is not. And I know you've mentioned a couple, but what are some of the worries and stresses that families with disabilities go through when thinking about the future? I know you've mentioned a couple, but are there any more in your experience that you've heard?
Well, there's a few, and I guess the most important one is that, one of the things that we've learned is that the greatest disability is not whatever particular medical condition or neurological condition that our children might have. The greatest disability is actually isolation and loneliness.
Very true.
And so what's important to all of us is that our children are surrounded by people who know them, who love them, who care about them, and welcome them into relationship. And that our children are part of a community, that they belong.
Yes, absolutely. And in your experience, why do you believe that people don't plan for the future or their own death?
Well, I think there's a couple of reasons. I think for many families that are in the midst of the crisis of coming to terms with their son or daughter's disability, sometimes they're so overwhelmed by that situation that they can't see beyond the day-to-day. And so it takes a while before kind of the dust settles and you're ready then to begin to think more long term. I think the other reasons is that, we live in a society that I call a death-defying society, that we act as if there is no death and then somehow we're surprised when it shows up.
Yes.
As opposed to saying, we are mortal beings and we're here for a temporal life. And then our purpose is to think beyond our lifetime. And one of the things I like about plan is we talk about the importance of plan is not to be here in a year or 5 or 20 years. It's meant to be here for 150, 200 years, 300 years.
Which is fantastic news to the rest of us.
Yeah, because we need to figure out a way of building and honoring and encouraging a compassionate society.
And I hope your message gets through to the rest of the society as a whole.
Well, and Tally, I see that it has. I look at the changes that have happened in my son's lifetime. He's 30. And when Josh was a toddler, he was the first child with severe disabilities to be welcomed into his neighborhood school. And so that was a big change. Now we take it for granted that our children will be integrated, but that was not always the case. They weren't welcomed. They weren't included. We thought that you needed, to have special talents to be able to be in relationship with our sons and daughters. You don't. You just have to have an open heart. And I watch the children today, and they have open hearts. They welcome our children easily. It's often the biggest barrier is the adults.
Yes, in my experience, I actually concur with what you're saying.
And, it makes sense. I mean, I look at my exposure to disability when I was a child or when I was an adolescent, and our citizens with disabilities were in institutions. They didn't attend regular schools. They weren't in community with us, and we didn't know how to be with them. And so, to me, there's a beautiful transformation that's happening. And I believe that we live in a caring community. We do live in a compassionate community, and what our children offer is the ability for the caring and the compassion to be expressed.
Absolutely. And for our international listeners who might not be aware, in British Columbia, we do have what's called inclusive education. So regardless of your ability, you are legally allowed and entitled to attend a public education.
Yes.
And I believe that's what Ted was talking about earlier, if some of you weren't aware.
Yeah.
Now, Rebecca, what are the benefits of seeking Plan's help and advice?
One benefit of joining Plan is that families enjoy close connection with other families who are living with similar experiences. This creates a strong voice for community, inclusion, and diversity. We don't just speak with one voice, we speak with hundreds. People with disabilities also have more opportunities to collaborate with others in their personal support network to create the lives that they want for themselves. Parents have peace of mind when they're no longer here that their sons and daughters will continue to live vibrant and active lives as members of their communities. And by helping families make plans for the future, we help them to feel more confident about it.
Which is always important.
Network members and the rest of us who have a chance to be involved in this heartfelt work also become more grounded in the abundance of love and connection and opportunities that are available all around us.
And I absolutely adore the fact that love, kindness, and compassion really are cornerstones to Plan's organization.
They sure are.
Now, what types of challenges do you need to have access to your services?
At Plan, we feel that developing strong and supportive personal networks is life work, and it's something that's important to every single one of us to live our best lives. But we understand that for some people, making social connections is more difficult than others. So the people who join Plan are typically facing some sort of vulnerability or risk of isolation. Many have a family member who has an intellectual disability, autism, or another condition that puts them in the place of looking for additional support.
Yes.
So we don't have any set eligibility criteria for membership. The most important thing is that the family and the person who the network is going to be built around are ready and willing to collaborate in the process of building that network and engage in the process of making good plans for now and in the future.
So is what you're saying that families don't necessarily have to have some type of disability or challenge? They just have to be a family in crisis in need of your support and service?
In crisis, or even thinking proactively, wanting to think about the future and build a good life now as well.
Which I think is really important, and I know many typical families as a whole really should also be thinking about these issues that Plan so eloquently services our community.
It's like I said, having strong relationships is something that's important for all of us.
Absolutely. And what types of support do you offer families and individuals here? I know you've mentioned a couple, but what others are there?
Sure. The work that we do at Plan falls within 3 key categories. The first one, and the most important, is developing personal support networks.
Yes.
We also help people to plan for a good life, for now and in the future, and building a strong network of families that support each other and understand each other.
Which is great. Now, I know you mentioned a support network, but what is a support network and why is it vital?
Developing personal support networks is about mobilizing our friends and relationships to create the lives that we want in community. If a person's in a situation where they have very few friends, we spend time with them in their neighborhoods, helping them to connect with others who share similar gifts. In this way, the person expands their network and creates new relationships.
That's fantastic. And what is advocacy and why is this extremely important? I know you've mentioned that as well.
When we talk about advocacy at Plan, we're talking about supporting a person, a family, or a personal support network to ask for a change or an improvement in a program or service. Or sometimes they're looking or asking for new support funding.
Yes.
And at Plan, we use an approach called relationship-based advocacy.
Interesting. And what's that?
This means that when we're pursuing solutions to a challenge, at the same time, we're strengthening the relationships that we have with the formal people within the systems.
Okay. And who are the quote-unquote members you work with?
Plan members are called Lifetime members, and we also support people across Canada through our toll-free helpline. We also just introduced a new program called Friends of Plan, which helps us to support families who aren't quite ready for Lifetime membership. While we have a small staff team, the core of our work, including our board and committees, are families who have direct knowledge of disability needs and know firsthand what it takes to build strong personal support networks and make effective plans for the future.
Which is great. And please note that Plan's details will be on the autism30.com webpage. So if you want more information, you certainly can seek there. What is financial planning and how do you assist our community members with theirs, Tim?
Talia, that's a great question. So my colleagues Ted and Rebecca have really talked about plan from a place of heart.
Yes.
And I think that that's really important. But along with the heart, there's work of the head, and that's the planning and figuring out how to secure the future for your loved one with a disability. So,
which is really important.
It's a critical part of the entire process. Financial planning is the process related to setting goals and putting strategies in place to create personal financial security and stability. How we help the community to do that. We offer courses and education around wills, trusts, and estates. But if you're a lifetime member of Plan, we have a family financial advisor who's, a knowledgeable family member. The advisor meets with our member families once or more per year to assist them by reviewing their financial progress and recommending further steps to them that they might want to take. The advisor may also recommend a legal review of certain documents from time to time.
Which is really important to know because I know if you have a child or a person with disabilities, the particular circumstances surrounding the legality and financial planning for that is very different than planning for a typical child's future.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to state it really simply, your senses should be heightened to making sure that all of the financial pieces to securing a good life for your relative are put in place as early as possible.
No question. And you mentioned wills and estates. So what is a will and estate? What's the difference between the two for those that don't know?
Yeah, so I'm going to give you sort of the clinical answer to it, and then maybe we can break it down a little bit. So
absolutely.
So a will or estate is a legal document by which a person, the testator, expresses his or her wishes as to how his or her property is to be distributed at death. Then this names one or more persons, the executor, to manage the estate until its final distribution. An estate is the net worth of a person at any time, either alive or dead. It is the sum of a person's assets, legal rights, interests, and entitlements to property of any kind, less all liabilities at that time. So let's state it really simply. The difference is that...
Yes, please do.
Yeah, okay. So the difference is that a will is the document that defines what the estate of a person is, and the estate is the sum of the person's assets.
You want to know what? You put that really well, and I think that was really clear for our audience. But what are some different aspects for wills made for members of our community and the general public that we should be made aware of?
So, thanks for asking that question. There are many considerations when the relative or parent of a family member or child with a disability is preparing a will. While I can't cover all of them, there are a couple that are probably really relevant to talk about. So first and most important to state here is that, I can't say strongly enough that every Canadian with any asset should have a current will. Further to that, it's almost negligent for a family with a relative with a disability not to have a current will in place. Again, we can't state that strongly enough.
And I concur.
Thanks, Tali. We recommend that you seek out and work with a legal professional who is familiar with and has experience in preparing wills from a disability perspective. The reason we suggest this is that the planning and estate considerations tend to be more complex for people with disabilities.
Very true.
So I think that would probably lead me to my final consideration I can make here is very often the estate or part of it will be directed or moved into a trust, which depending on the type of trust can be used to provide income and benefits to the beneficiary, which is a relative with a disability. It's important that the will is clear on what assets will be moved to the trust and how and who will be distributing them.
That's great. And it's wonderful here at Plan that the support here to help people with their wills and estate is established.
Yeah, it's really, Ted talked about the beginnings of Plan. And in the very early stages, aside from the personal support networks, the founders of Plan, the most important thing that they did was help families do financial planning.
Which is excellent. I think that's really intelligent of you to start off working with the families in that capacity.
Yeah, one of our founders, Jack Collins, passed away last year. And, he was instrumental in going all over this province and ensuring that families with a son or daughter with a disability had their financial planning done and in order.
Which is excellent. And another aspect of financial planning for our children is an RDSP. And I know we've mentioned it in a prior podcast with Mr. Aladmansky, but in your words, what is an RDSP and how does Plan offer information to help our community?
Tali, thanks for that. So a Registered Disability Savings Plan, or RDSP, is the savings plan that is intended to help parents and others save for the long-term financial security of their relative who's eligible for the disability tax credit. Contributions to an RDSP are not tax deductible and can be made until the end of the year in which the beneficiary, person with a disability, turns 59. It's interesting to note that contributions that are withdrawn are not included in income for the beneficiary, again, person with a disability, when they're paid out of the RDSP. However, the Canada Disability Savings Grant, the Disability Savings Bond, investment income earned in the plan, and rollover amounts are included in the beneficiary's income for tax purposes when they're paid out of the RDSP. Now, I know that sounds pretty complex.
Yes, I'm sure it does for some.
And the RDSP overall is reasonably simple to understand and to manage, but we fully understand that it's a complex vehicle for folks that haven't started it. And so what we've done is we've helped almost all of our Plan families to have an RDSP, and we felt it's important that we help Plan families across Canada who maybe don't have one open yet. So we provide free advice on the RDSP to anyone in Canada through our toll-free RDSP information phone line. That's 1-844-311-7526.
And for those of you that don't have a pen and paper handy with you, that information will also be on the autism30.com webpage.
Perfect, Tali. And or for folks that have access to the internet, they can get the same information at rdsp.com.
That sounds fantastic, and I believe that information is currently available on our webpage.
Perfect.
Now, I know all three of you have spoken about wonderful things and very important things, but I know we haven't had much time to go into great detail. So do you offer workshops, and what are some of the ones that you've given?
Tali, thanks for that. So, Plan Institute, which is the educational arm of Plan, offers many workshops. And over the last 15 years, we've helped thousands of people learn about wills and estates, family leadership, sibling and successor transitions, caregiver retreats, youth transitional learning, as well as many others. Your listeners can find all of our current workshop offerings on the Plan Institute website, and that is institute.plan.ca.
And that's great. And what upcoming workshops are there?
So Tally, like many folks do, we take a break over the summer from holding workshops, but this fall we have an exciting lineup with some of the following workshops. We'll be offering Wills, Trusts, and Estates. We'll be offering an advocacy series with Al Admansky, one of our Plan founders. And then we'll be offering a 6-series webinar called Impact, which explores social innovation and disability.
Great. Now, how do you register for one of these workshops?
So Tally, the best way to register for any of our courses and to see what we are specifically offering is to go to, again, institute.plan.ca.
And for those who may find it difficult to attend a workshop in the Lower Mainland of Vancouver, do you offer these courses online, and what are they?
Tally, that's a great question. So many of our courses at this time are only available in the Greater Vancouver area to attend live. However, our Weaving the Ties That Bind course, which helps people learn and prepare to facilitate a personal support network, is available online. We are working on having our Wills, Trusts, and Estates as an online hosted webinar starting in 2017.
Oh, fantastic. Do you have to be a resident of British Columbia or Canadian to take the online course?
No, the beautiful thing is about that course is that it's completely facilitated online, and you can be honestly anywhere in the world as long as you have an internet connected computer.
Ah, fantastic. And how do you register for the online course then?
Yeah, once again, institute.plan.ca is the best place to get the information on all of our courses and learning, and people can sign up right online there.
And that's great, and I hope many of you do so. Who can be considered a caregiver, Rebecca?
Caregivers are anyone who self-identify as being in the role of providing care to another person. So for the purpose of our workshops, a lot of people are moms, dads, also could be a sister or brother who's in that primary caregiving role. A lot of people also identify their caregivers as people in formal support, so it could be a support worker or a program manager at a group home where they live. Anyone who's caring for another lets us know that our workshops and the services we provide are meaningful and relevant to them.
So that's great. They don't necessarily have to be biologically related to that person. It could be anybody, as you mentioned.
Exactly.
Oh, fantastic information. And I know you spoke about retreats in the past. So what are the retreats that you offer, and can you tell us more about them, Tim?
I definitely can. So Tally, we offer 2 retreats that are extended opportunities for families and individuals to learn, reflect, and contribute to each other. They're the Caregivers Retreat and Thinking Like a Movement. And you know, the main thing about these extended retreats, it's an opportunity for families to come together and to strengthen the family voice in British Columbia and frankly across Canada. We've had people attend from Eastern Canada. And Thinking Like a Movement is a real opportunity to, again, strengthen the family movement, but to really think about how we might influence policy change in this country to create a more inclusive, welcoming place.
Absolutely. And in your words, why are these retreats so important, Ted?
Well, I've facilitated the Caregivers Retreat the last 3 years, and it's a coming together of moms and dads and brothers and sisters and those that are in that role of caregiver. And, you know, this is challenging and demanding work, and it can wear us down. And what happens on this weekend is you come together with other caregivers, and it's a time to be nourished. It's a time to share the wisdom that we have gathered on our journey. It's a time to be around others who know exactly what's happening, and we know that we're at home with those people.
Absolutely.
And it's an opportunity to fill our cup again. The other thing that I have valued from it is that, you know, there's when we have a child with disability, there's a loss that happens. And there's a process of grieving that loss and making peace with it and then dreaming a new dream.
True.
And what I have valued is that at these retreats there tends to be a nice range of caregivers, some who are in the beginning of their journey, some who have been on the journey for 3 decades. And there's this beautiful exchange of how to walk this path and to walk it with others.
Absolutely, and I think they're invaluable, and really what you get out of the retreats can't be put into words and can't be valued monetarily, because I think that when you go on one of your retreats, you leave feeling exactly as you said, invigorated, with hope and knowledge, and to be surrounded by a community of people who, in my terms, get it, and be supportive. I think you've mentioned it earlier on in your podcast, where you're surrounded by love, caring, compassion, and you really leave believing, as I do, that the world is a wonderful place because of the work that you all do, and because of the philosophy of the people that you bring together and send us out into the community, which is fantastic. Now, Tim, you also do a monthly newsletter, which is really important. And how can people subscribe and get it?
So yeah, we've been doing a monthly newsletter for years now, and it's actually not quite every month, probably every 2 months. But folks can subscribe to the newsletter by just simply going to, once again, institute.plan.ca and just put in their email address, and they'll be registered to get the newsletter.
And I know earlier, Tim, you were talking about helping laws be created and whatnot. So in what way has Plan influenced laws that helped our community in this country?
So, the interesting thing is, I think that as citizens, that we very often think that government knows best and government knows what to do. And I think that that's not strictly true. I think that the way that government knows best is when it's influenced and it works in partnership with its citizens. And so Plan realized that very often and very early, that the way to work with government was to be collaborative. Plan families have been instrumental in creating the Registered Disability Savings Program, and more specifically in British Columbia, the Representation Agreement, which allows individuals to plan for the possibility of future incapacity. The Representation Agreement is a tool that allows an individual to name another person to manage their personal and healthcare needs and financial matters in the event that they are not able to do so on their own. We are one of only 2 places that I know of in the world that has a representation agreement, and that comes directly from Plan families and from others identifying that they wanted an instrument to be able to do that.
And how fortunate are we that we live here to be able to access this? And what other laws and policies are you currently working on changing?
So, Plan families are always contemplating ways that we can influence policy. Most recently, Plan families were part of and instrumental in British Columbia in having the asset limit raised in BC to $100,000 for an individual, $200,000 for a couple who have disabilities, from a level before of $5,000 and $10,000.
Wow.
It's a pretty significant change. We're currently supporting changes to the RDSP, which include creditor protection, which the Registered Retirement Savings Plan has, but unfortunately the RDSP doesn't have in place, and allowing certain expenses to be covered by the plan holder, being able to take funds out of the RDSP to use them. We're also, closer to home, supporting the Save Our Bus Pass campaign in BC, and we would love to see a living wage provided for all people with disabilities in Canada.
These all sound fantastic. And if the general public who care about these issues want to help Plan supporting change with the current laws, how can they do that?
Well, that's a great question. I think from my perspective, and maybe I'll ask Ted to weigh in as well, I think the best way is to lend your voice to the issues that resonate with you personally. I'd ask you to raise your voice and make it public.
I would say that one of the things to do is to come together with like-minded folks, share your ideas. One of the things I admire about the Plan families is that they're solution-focused. So we don't spend a whole lot of time complaining about the way things are. We invest our energy in generating ideas and possibilities. And as Tim talked about, we work in collaboration with government. And so as an example of that, many years ago, there was a group of us families that went over to our capital, Victoria, to meet with our legislators. And we all sat down together, and then we proceeded to tell them all the things that we thought they were doing well.
Very
And so they
interesting.
listened to us for about 20 minutes, and then they said, okay, so why did you really come? and we said, that's why we came. I think government doesn't always know what they do well, and when we recognize that we have a role and a responsibility to be in collaboration with government. We have wisdom as families.
No question.
And to honor that wisdom and to share it in a collaborative way, I think that's the way that we can help to advance this community to be a better community.
And that's so beautifully put. Now, we've mentioned a lot of really important things in the podcast and great information. However, is there anything else that you'd like to tell our audience about something we have not yet mentioned? Tim?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think what we'd like everybody to know is that Plan is accepting new Lifetime member families to our organization. We're happy to provide more information on either our Friends of Plan program or Lifetime membership, and folks can just simply call us at 604-439-9566.
That's wonderful. And what about you?
Well, I just want to mention one of the initiatives that we're working on with our families and government is that we're trying to actually change the way government supports our sons and daughters. Currently, disability benefits in this province is embedded within the welfare system, and we believe that's the wrong place. Welfare was meant to be a temporary system of last resort, and what we say is that our children's disability is not temporary, and we shouldn't be using a system of last resort. So we're inviting government to consider the way to support our families needs to be embedded within a different frame of government, a different mindset, and we're in conversation with them about that.
That's great. And Rebecca, what about you?
I think that Tim and Ted have covered most of the important things.
Fantastic. Now, something we really haven't talked about is, what do you love about your involvement with Plan? Because obviously all three of you are very passionate and devoted to your jobs, but what do you personally love about working here?
Well, I love being part of a group of families that are visionary, that are courageous, that are committed, that are collaborative, that are solution-focused, and that recognize that we're on this journey together. And so I'm reminded of one of those beautiful quotes that says that if you want to walk fast, walk alone. If you want to walk far, walk together.
Oh, beautiful.
And I see this as a journey of walking together.
Absolutely. That was lovely. And Rebecca, what about you?
Every day I get to spend time with people and families who are thinking about their lives and sharing their goals and their deepest dreams, and to be able to be a part of helping connect those people with others in the community who also want to be involved is a really special privilege for me, and something that constantly encourages and inspires me.
Fantastic. And what about you, Tim?
You know, Tally, simply, I am deeply passionate about the opportunity to make a difference by bringing more light to help create an inclusive society and full citizenship to Canadians.
And how lucky is Plan to have all three of you as its employees? Now, the last question that I have from my podcast is the one thing. What would you like the world to know about autism? Tim?
So, Tally, I think for me it's that love is love, and that we all in some ways have a disability. You know, many of us have found a way to adapt, and in many cases use it to an advantage. Autism, like all other disabilities or different abilities, lets us see life through a different lens and or experience if we're open to that. So I guess that would be my ask of your listeners, to embrace and reflect and welcome the difference.
That's lovely. And Rebecca, what about you?
I think that's a really big question, and I'm trying to think about what my autistic friends would hope that I would say in response to it. I think from my own experience, I'll say that autism is full of diversity, and beyond that, if you're someone who wants to know more about autism, I would suggest connecting with someone who is autistic and asking them what life's like for them.
That's really a good piece of information. And what about you, Ted?
Well, I have a more serious message here, Tally, is that I see that autism is actually an epidemic. It's a national epidemic of proportions never seen in this modern world. Prior to 1980, the rate of autism was 1 in 10,000. Today, it's estimated at 1 in 45.
Yes, true.
And it's projected by 2030 to be 1 in 2. And what I see is that our government and our health ministry have not recognize the seriousness of this epidemic and are not using the resources that are needed to understand this and end it. And to me, more needs to be done. And to me, that's why it's important that families come together as a powerful voice and demand action and demand resources and demand change.
Absolutely. And for those of you that weren't aware of those statistics, they're actually very accurate. And anybody that's interested in pursuing, pushing government into researching about the autism epidemic, please look at the plan contact details on our webpage at autism30.com. But I concur exactly what you're saying. And I want to thank all three of you for joining us today, Tim, Rebecca, and Ted. You do fantastic work for Plan, and I know we in Canada are very fortunate and lucky to have you as an organization helping our youth and adults with disabilities.
Thanks,
Thank you, Tally.
You're very welcome. And I want to thank you, our Autism 30 audience, for joining us today. And if you would like more information, once again, on Plan, go to our website at autism30.com and like us and join us on Facebook, Twitter, and Google+. And if you're listening to us on iTunes, don't forget to write us a review. Once again, this is Tally telling you to live in love.
Hey yo, I'm an autism awareness angel, making sure my wings protect the different, the stranger than. I'm an autism awareness angel. It's good, cause I'm cool with the unique behavior. I'm an autism awareness angel. Will you accept me? Cause I accept you. I'm an autism awareness angel, cause a view from the spectrum is a better point of